Hi, this is Roger, thanks for dropping by. Kitchen time, as mentioned on Sunday, I think. What was it today? Tuesday. All day apparently. I'm pretty sure I said I've got 3 Oncidium intergenerics that are in the peat stuff that have come round to, finished blooming. They've got new growths, they're ready for a repot to get them out of a media that is not bad, but is very, very difficult to control watering, and it takes an awful lot of practice to get it right. And it's so easy to lose a root system by putting too much water in there and them staying wet too long and not having a reasonable attempt at drying off. It just holds so much water basically. There is only 2, not 3, unless there's one that I just can't find in there. One's the bobcat that has recently finished blooming, literally, just wildcat bobcat, and the other one is Oncidium Cheyenne. Now that's going to be a trade name, I doubt if that's a registered name, but nonetheless I'm going to have a go at doing things a bit differently, and it's based on the success with the repot of the Zygo. Now what was different about that was the roots got treated as though they were made of glass. Absolute delicacy, touching an absolute minimum, no poking and prodding about, and most of the old stuff was got off by running under the tap. Yeah, so I'm going to try and adopt that policy on the grounds that with the Zygo I didn't lose the old roots, yeah, which gave the plant time without stress to get to the point where the new roots started to grow, which they're now doing. And the old roots are still there, and some of them are still growing. So the root tips haven't stopped, which they often do. And I think a lot of it is just bruising and bashing around. It does make sense. So we're going to do things a bit more delicate. We will still... Now things are a bit different. When I'm making my messy bit, getting stuff out of a pot, I've normally got a great big green tray. Unfortunately it's chucking it down outside, and that's where the green tray is, and it's full of water, so it's staying out there. It would get everything in such a mess in here. So I've got a much smaller container, which might mean I'll have to do one and empty it and then do another one. But the idea is to get these out very gently. Now they'll come out of the pot easy enough, but it's getting the old media off where the problem often lies. See, I mean, that's just, well, the easiest expression I can use is dirt, because that is almost what it is. It is lumpy, and there is hard stuff in there, which could be bark, but what else it is, I don't really know. Now, this is the thing, yeah, we've got a lot of this has just fallen off. And just teasing enough away so that you can see what we've got in the middle is the original plug, which in this case is the same stuff without the lumps. And then what's happened is it's been dropped on, so it's been just dropped into a larger pot and some new stuff put down the sides, and as a consequence these roots are quite good. But as I said, I'm going to try and get most of this off with the tap. But that's, there's actually some live roots in here with growing tips. The roots that are hanging on the most are in the centre, and that's the oldest part. And even in there, there's roots that are active. So that's as far as I'm going to go. I'm going to do this under the tap. And minimum touching, minimum poking about. The only poking about above ground I'm going to do is getting the sheaths off, which I always do anyway. Hidey places for bugs, so we'll get rid of those while I think about it, otherwise I shall forget. Always do things when they're on your mind. If you put them off, chances are you'll get distracted. Now this as a plant has only got 2 bulbs on it, but they're good bulbs. And the leaves have been chopped on this, so obviously that was probably physical damage that somebody cut off to make it look pretty, or prettier. And then we've got the one that actually bloomed. So it's not a large plant, but it does have a strong new growth coming. And if that new growth can get anywhere near as big as that, that will then, if you think that's a 50% increase in the plant, in its overall strength. It's gone from 2 to 3 bulbs, so you know. So, and it looks a good strong bulb, and it's got active roots coming out. So, very, very delicate treatment. It's going to bung me sink up, I suspect, but I can sort that out now. I've got enough room to get the next one in as well, rather than having to go out and empty it. Right, so this one's been grown on because it's got smaller bulbs, and it's been grown on to that. Now that is a colossal bulb for the Wildcat series, because I've had other Wildcats in the past, and I don't think I've ever had a bulb that big. Now again, I mean, it's not an appalling root system by any means. Again, it's just, this is a different media altogether, because this has got fibrous bits in. I'm not even sure I know what they are. Very, very crumbly. It's actually quite nice. That would be brilliant for out in the garden. You know, for growing tubs and things, putting your bedding plants in. It's lovely stuff. It's not gone off or anything. It's lovely, but it's not easy. And in the middle of the plant, we don't have anything odd. We don't have a lump of anything. There are dead roots in the middle, so it will need a trim. But strangely enough, although this is a stronger plant, I don't suspect a lot of these roots will actually survive. Some of these are going to go. They've just got that look about them. And at the moment I don't see any new roots at all. But what we do have again is new growth. Whoops, new growth starting. So roots will come, new ones I mean. And in the meantime, it's a strong plant. What we've got here is a buried pseudobulb, which will have to come off for me to enable me to pot that properly. So that one's coming off. It's actually separated anyway. Do you know that would grow? I'm sure it would. It's got enough roots to support it, hasn't it? I'm sure that would push out and start a new plant. But the thing is, this is just a mass-produced plant. In my world with the orchid societies, those plants, people just don't want them. They don't see them as worthy of the space. They like species and things that you can't pronounce and a lot of that sort of stuff. Bit of snobbery going on there, I suspect. But your common or garden stuff that you can pick up in a supermarket or in a garden centre, they're just not fussed on. And that's all this would be if I grew another one. Plus, from that to blooming size is 3 years. 2 minimum, probably 3. And I haven't got the patience to be watering and messing about with a pot and probably repotting it along the way. You know, I've got other things to do. So we ought to start thinking about keeping plants in the UK, because you know these 2 plants that I'm looking at here would have arrived from the EU. They would have come from Germany or Holland, from one of the mass producers, and that route is now blocked. Yeah, so once the people who got those across into the UK to sell have sold them, they're not going to get any more. Now I don't know what's going to happen with the big sellers, like the large supermarkets, the likes of Sainsbury's, you know, Tesco's, Marks and Spencer's, because they've got huge buying power, and they may well be able to still get huge quantities of plants across from those EU mass producers. But certainly smaller units just won't be able to do it, because the paperwork and everything will be just far too much for them. So that you know, I don't know what's going to happen, but if those large EU mass producers can supply the really large sellers over here, then these sorts of plants will continue to be available. But as soon as you venture off you know, like in the dendrobium world, as soon as you venture away from the nobiles and the phalaenopsis types, it's going to get very, very thin on the ground, and you're going to have a hell of a job to find anybody selling them once they've sold the ones they've already got. I mean, I do know some UK suppliers that don't necessarily get their plants from the EU. They do go the extra mile and get them from other places like the Far East and even South America, you know, the likes of Ecuador and Peru and places like that, and they get them in large, big enough quantities to make it worthwhile. So we're not going to be devoid of orchids, but it's not going to be as easy. I mean, one of my favourite sellers in the Netherlands no longer sells to the UK. Stopped, dead. So, you know, that line of thing is gone. Anyway, we'll get these run under the tap and get all the old stuff off, and we'll sort out some pots and some media and stuff. So I'll be back. Okay, quick easy decisions here. Both going in the same sort of pot, preferably not with another pot stuck inside. There's one jammed in there. They're both these opaque pots. They look a bit stripy, but that's just a patterning basically. These are quite large pots. You know my theory of always potting Oncidium types in the smallest pot possible. These have both got good large root systems. So let's give them room to move rather than squash them. And my approach of being as delicate as possible with the root system doesn't warrant squashing it in the smallest pot possible this time round. That doesn't mean it won't be so next time. Now I've got coconut husk, pre-soaked, soaking wet. I don't normally like using wet media to pot. I just don't like it. It sticks to the roots and leaves gaps because it sticks to itself as well. But if you put it in dry, it can be difficult to wet. The water, obviously, once you start pouring water through a pot, it goes through at a very rapid rate, and it can often literally just go through and hardly wet the media at all. Whereas if it's pre-soaked like this, it will hold water for some considerable time. So we've got plenty of that. I mean, I've got two large pots here. In fact, I'm going to have it all. It's already wet. I just as well mix it up. And just as well use it, quite honestly. Hope I have enough for both pots and don't have to mix any more. Right. But what we don't like is it all stuck to our hands. Well, I don't. You might. Right. So that's that, and then that's going to have virtually equal parts of the Burnham's bark, which I do like. I mean, I've got two types of bark at the moment. I've got the Burnham's bark, which is quite small, with little sticky bits in and various shapes and sizes, but I would say it would be classed as a, compared with the Orchiata bark, that is heading towards the small grade rather than medium. It was sold as medium, but it's a different brand. You know, people have different ideas. So that's about equal parts of the cocoa husk and the Burnham's medium bark, even though it looks quite small to me. But I like that size, quite honestly. The medium bark for what I'm doing now would be a bit big, and the Orchiata small grade would be too small. And I found with that it breaks down incredibly quickly, the small grade Orchiata. It just doesn't last. The big stuff's still pretty good. I'm still okay with that. But I've virtually run out of the big stuff. It's all gone. And I probably won't buy any more because the new big stuff that I've got, which came from the speciotic plants, I like a lot, an awful lot. That is rock hard. It's like rock, literally. It's so hard, and it's good chunky stuff. It's bigger than the Orchiata. But as is my wont now, this is relatively new. I haven't been doing this long. I still don't know whether it does any good, but there's going to be some charcoal in the mix. The idea with the charcoal, apart from making me look like a coal miner, is to Last time I lent it on the kettle, didn't I? And it all got hot. It was standing there for now. So I'm just going to wash my hands. I'm not working with black hands like that. The idea with the charcoal is that it supposedly absorbs impurities. Well, it does do that. I mean, the charcoal is used in filtrations and things like that, so it sort of does that job. But I do query what happens when it's full. You know, when it's been doing that stuff and absorbing all these things, there must come a point where there's not room for any more and it's full. And I'm joking, but that is a logical thought. So that's my mix. It's, there will be air in there, the size of the pieces, but it's also going to retain moisture pretty good. As I said, we are working with Oncidiums here, and certainly in their growing period they do not like to dry out at all. However, if they're in one of their I'm doing nothing phases, you know, like no new growths, not much root growth going on, if any, no spikes being produced. If that is the state of the plant, in other words it's not doing anything, then perhaps it should dry out in between and have a little period where it's not soaking wet. Now this big stuff's only here to go in the bottom of the pot. Still seems a bit wasteful. Some of the best large bark I've ever had used for crocking, but it does the job. And it won't break down. I won't get a soggy mass in the bottom of the pot. That's for sure. Right, now you get to see the roots. I have trimmed nothing. That's the root system that's going in the pot. I've taken no roots off. Got a load of water inside that new little growth there. Do you know, that new little growth looks like it might be 2. It is an odd shape, and if you look there, there's a rosette of leaves. There's another one there. I've never looked at it quite that close. I'll make sure that's on camera, because that could be special. But that does actually look like 2 new growths coming out there. That will be good. That'll be ever so good, in fact. Extra special good. Right, but as you can see, that's a pretty good root system. Now it is going to look a little lost in that pot, and that is quite a large pot. But as I said, I've taken nothing off, so the root system is going in exactly as it is. And it's going to have the stuff dropped in around it very gently to fill the gaps. So as always, find where your new growth is, go to the other side of the pot to where the new growth is and fill it up. The idea being that you shouldn't need to put any more around there, and then push the plant back into that area, which puts the new growth, in this case, right in the middle of the pot. That gives it plenty of room to grow and expand. Plenty of room. This is more of a wiggling to get this to go down rather than a pushing and shoving. So I'm going to start going an awful lot more careful with my root systems and stop being a bit brutal like I have been. It worked for the Zygo. Not only the timing, I mean the timing is part of the story, but also your treatment of roots. You know, the more delicate you can be, the more tips will remain active, the less sort of snaps that happen halfway back down the root where the bottom half of it's then going to die off and you're going to hope that it's going to branch out, all that sort of stuff. Right. Well, we're definitely not going to have enough media, not for another, although the next one, so I just want to tap this down now rather than push it down. Yeah, that looks pretty full. Now we've got a pseudo bulb half buried. We will deal with that with our finger by just hooking that media away from that buried bulb. But unlike a lot of bulbs that end up sloping towards the back like that, this one does have roots. but I don't want it buried. So you can see I've sloped the media down so that this is not buried. It is sat in the media, but the thing is with this cocoa husk, you can go a bit deeper than you perhaps would with other medias, because it's always got air around it. Right, that's pretty firm as well. Yay! So we don't need to mess about staking. And I'll put the original tag back in for now. So that's one done. That's the Oncidium Cheyenne. I suspect, whatever mass producer that is, the Oncidium type intergenerics produced by that mass producer may well get Native American tribal names, as you know, that's their thing, sort of thing. I mean, I know one of the mass producers that does Phalaenopsis uses cities, you know, like Amsterdam and things like that. So you know, people do have their ways of doing things. Right, now what am I going to do? I'm going to have to shut off again because I know that's not enough, but let's use what we've got and then I'll know how much to go and get. So we'll break off after we've done a bit. Now this root system is even bigger, and again I've taken nothing off. All I've actually done is run it under the tap, wiggled it a bit with my fingers to get as much as I can of the old stuff off. Now there are a few dead roots in the middle there that I could trim, but I don't think it's worth it. I'm just going to run with it and we will see how that goes. So we've got some in the bottom and we've got our crocking. This is such a big root system, I'm going to have to twist the plant to get it to start to sink down in. Having done this before with other plants, I now know that I'll have a hell of a job getting this media to get down in between those roots. So even smaller amounts than before, tiny little bits at a time, and just gently try and tease them down. Notice I'm still round the back of the plant, the opposite side of the plant to where the new growth is. Do that bit first, then push the plant back so that great big fat bulb is right in the middle. With the new growth on it, sorry I forgot to say. Yeah. So a bit at a time here. Just try and tease it down. There's going to be some air gaps, I'm sure. It's not the end of the world with an Oncidium, but it's better if they're not there. I mean, there's some plants actually almost head for the gaps, like Cattleyas and things. They'll head for the open spaces because, you know, they grow that way. They like plenty of air and space around their roots. So they're a different kettle of fish, but an Oncidium type, you know, I might just about have enough here. Right, let's bang that down. Yeah, I reckon I'm just about going to have enough. So I've got again, I've got a bulb that's a bit low, so we'll hook some of the media away from it, and that'll give me some more to go around the front of the plant. Yeah, I'm actually going to get away with this. I'm not going to have to mix up anymore. Yippee! And we've used it all up, so no waste. That's pure luck, not judgment. It's just how it goes sometimes. Right, so that's our new growth there, and nice and secure. If you get an Oncidium type with a good root system, you very rarely have to stake it when you repot. There's just going to be enough in the root system to hold it. So I'm just gathering up all the tiny little pieces so that I don't waste any. I know it only seems silly because there's so few, but you know, they're better off in that pot than in the bin, aren't they? So there we go, that's the two done. Now I'm pretty confident, although I'm not going to go back to, well, I can't dig back in records, can I, because I lost them all. I had the wildcat bobcat once before and lost it. And my favourite of all the wildcats was wildcat cheetah, and that just rotted. That just went all of a sudden. And I haven't seen it for sale since. But the wildcats are a set, you know, and basically their clonal name is one of the big cats, you know, like bobcat, cheetah, various things like that. So that's a tatty label, but it'll do for now. Might have a go with my label maker. So that's those two done, and very pleased with the root systems, which means that when I buy into generics in that very fibrous media, I am getting the hang of how to water them, because the roots are lasting and not rotting off. Although out of the last set that we did, several of them did have pretty poor root systems, quite honestly. So, not perfect yet, but getting better at it, that's the thing. Now that media is wet, so I don't need to water these in, but I will probably need to water them either tomorrow or the next day, because they will start to dry, because the bark and the charcoal was bone dry, even though the coconut husk was wet, actually dripping wet. But that will all balance itself out, and the bark will draw a lot of the moisture out of that coconut husk, so the pot will start to dry quite quickly. And then next time it's watered, providing I don't let it get totally dry again, it'll hold even more moisture, but cannot go soggy. The media's new. You can't get soggy new media. It just doesn't work. Well, not this sort of media anyway. It's always going to have air around it. And it's going to be very interesting to follow that new growth, because I'm pretty confident that is a pair of new growths which I have never ever seen before. That is unique. I've never seen a growth come out like that. So if it's two new growths, that'll be absolutely wonderful, because that's the potential for two spikes down the line. And possibly at exactly the same time, because those growths are starting together. But we'll have to see the progress on that. So that's those two out of the way. I went through my notes looking at everything that potentially had an old repotting date on it, given that I lost records, yeah? So there's quite a few in there that just says 2019. Yeah, well, it's 2021 now, and I don't know whether it was early 2019, mid or late. So I'm assuming early for my notes anyway. So if it was repotted in early 2019, that's 2 years. Yeah? So they need a good look at. And then I've got to ask myself, will they go another growth cycle in the same media? And the answer will probably be no, because some of those may still have moss in the pots. So out it comes, replaced by the coconut husk. Anyway, that's those two done. See you next time. Thanks for dropping by.